what does it mean to be Kenyan?
Kenya is actually a hub for innovation. It's known for quality. Being Kenyan is being authentic. Kenya is the sixth largest producer of geothermal energy after Scandinavia and Iceland. 93% of our power generation is from renewable sources.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that the world has about Kenya?
The biggest misconception is really the
Welcome back to the show. Now, as you know, what we're going to be covering in the next series of sessions is our Inside Kenya special, taking the big conversations that define the region beyond the simple ideas of Menelin or having a look at the socialisms of our times, but taking an introspective view from the leaders in the forefront to say, well, what does it mean to be Kenyan, or this idea of Kenyanness? Now, my guest for today's show is a phenomenal individual. He's evidently part of the top 40 under 40. He may say it was many years ago, but judging on his face, it seems like it's only 11 months back. He's now the CEO of a data center in Kenya. He spent many years, over 25 years, working across different various sectors. And importantly, he is an ambassador for change. Without doubt, his name is Snehar Shah. Snehar, before we kick off, why don't you give yourself a full introduction? Because I got a feeling I didn't do you quite the justice that you deserve in my 1 minute epilogue.
Thank you. Thanks, Rajan, and thanks for the opportunity. So my name is pronounced Snehar. It's Snehar Shah.
God, I feel like a
Um,
coconut right now, don't I? It's
no, many people get it wrong because yeah, the letters are confusing. But Snehar, in Sanskrit, it means to be affectionate, and that's how I've lived my life. I believe in building long-lasting, human relationships. And yeah, my journey has been that yeah, I've been born Kenyan. We are fourth generation in this country. And I was born in Mombasa, in the coast. That's where my mom comes from. But I grew up in the Rift Valley in a place called Eldoret. Eldoret is one of the highest altitude towns in Kenya, and that's where all the runners, the elite runners, come from. So I'm privileged to come from that, and then yeah, I would say running is also in my blood. So later in my life, but now I've become a marathon runner. So that's what keeps me keeps me out of mischief and keeps me fit.
so if I get
Um,
this right, then the name is affection and you run a lot. It's as long as you're not running away from things, it should be fine. Um,
yeah.
Tell the audience, what is it that you do in Kenya? Because you're now the CEO of a large data center in Kenya. And before we get into the full softer side of what Kenyanness means to you, but let's have a look at the commercial aspect. Data center, Kenya, most people I know for a fact are thinking, how on earth does it work?
Yeah, so my career actually started in the UK. I've been working in the sort of telecoms tech sector. I started working for a company called Orange, the telco, and that was quite a vibrant startup in the old days. And when they decided to acquire the incumbent in Kenya, called Telkom Kenya, about 15 years ago, that's when I moved here. And I moved here as a CFO. So I was responsible for turning around a parastatal. But then very quickly I got into innovation. So Kenya is typically known for our wildlife, our tourism, our agriculture. But not many people know this, but Kenya is actually a hub for innovation. Mobile money was actually invented in Kenya. There's a product called M-Pesa, which was launched here, and it's this one of the most, it is the most successful mobile money product. They do more transactions within the country than Western Union does globally, and about 80% of our GDP goes through M-Pesa. So early in my career in Kenya, I was tasked to launch a competitor product to M-Pesa called Orange Money, which I launched with the largest bank in the region here, which is equivalent of Grameen Bank, called Equity Bank. So that's really what got me into innovation. And once my 5 years were up here, I actually ended my corporate career and got into the world of startups. So the data center is actually currently my fourth startup. My first one was in the infrastructure space where we were built a portfolio of telecom towers across four countries in Africa, and we sold it to American Tower in 2018. My next venture was actually in renewable energy, but this was providing solar systems on a microfinance basis to the rural community. We did this on a pay-as-you-go basis, again leveraging mobile money. I grew that company to powering about 300,000 households across six countries in Africa. During COVID, we merged that company with a Canadian competitor called Solar Panda. And since then, I got into education, and I built up a company called Moringa School. So we're the market leader in training tech talent in this part of the world. We train software engineers, data scientists, and then place them into jobs. So my journey, Rajan, has been, in 5 year stints to basically take an idea, take a company, build it up, and then take it to exit. That's on the commercial side, but at the same time, what really has driven me and continues to drive me is the impact that these businesses make, and it's all about changing lives. And there's huge opportunity in not only in Kenya but on the continent, where the demographics show that by 2050, as much as a third of the world's working population will come from Africa.
Yeah.
So that's the future that's ahead. And I'll talk about my current business, which is data centers, and how that's going to also position ourselves as the center of Kenya is, we're on the equator,
Yeah.
but we're also, right in the middle of the world. So we like to think we are the center of the universe.
So you're at the center. What is the idea then? Because you have a data center. Economically, it makes sense. Now everything is going online. We know that this is where businesses are heading into. And then there's a whole structure now when it comes to security, cybersecurity, for example. But there must be many misconceptions that people have about Kenya and having a look at how robust the economy is. So run me through, how does a data center change the very scape of where Kenya's heading to? Surely there would have been one prior to you guys entering into the marketplace.
Right. So of course, our country has had its ups and downs. We got independence in 1963. But since then, the country has been very progressive. The economy has always been on the up. Yes, politically we have few turbulences, sort of every 5 years when it comes to election time. But they say data is the new oil, and even if you're a politician in this day and age, with social media, etc., you still need to be connected.
Yeah.
So whether the country is doing well or hopefully not, um, everybody will need connectivity. Everybody will need data. And especially since COVID, we've seen this
Yeah.
acceleration of the move to the cloud. So that's what we do. We really bring the cloud to our users on the ground. And there's interesting statistics that Africa makes up about 18% of the world's population, but we have less than 1% of the world's data center capacity. And we've seen what's happening in the Western world, in Asia, where there's a explosion of the deployment of data centers for the cloud, but now also for AI. To the extent that in certain countries, data centers are consuming a significant amount of the nation's electricity. So, like in countries like Ireland, Netherlands, it's more than a third of the electricity consumption, and actually, the population, the government are now starting to put caps to
Yeah.
that. Whereas, we here in Kenya, we have an abundant amount of power available. Again, this is a fact that not many people know. Kenya is the sixth largest producer of geothermal energy after Scandinavia and Iceland. So in Kenya today, 93% of our power generation is from renewable sources. So we are really well positioned. to provide data centers not only for our local or regional consumption, but actually for global consumption. And that's why companies like Microsoft have announced like they're putting in $1 billion investment to have their local cloud zone here, plus their AI compute being sort of made present in Kenya for their global needs.
But then that means there's going to be a legal recourse because traditionally what tends to happen is even when there's disputes is where is the data kept? So that means what also happens is if you are doing the data center, that means everything else around there is also going to generally go upscale. Your legal aspects are there, so you can be having a look at your cyber aspects, the cybersecurity pieces. So this means what you're doing is essentially transforming the scape of where Kenya is heading to, which is not just
Absolutely.
ambitious but
And
needed.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah, and Kenya is very progressive in terms of regulation, and one of the reasons why the mobile money or the M-Pesa product was such a success is because the country had they had responsible yet flexible regulation. In a bigger populous country like Nigeria, which is 200 million, even to date, they've not made mobile money a reality because the regulation has been too
Yeah.
stringent, too tight. Countries like Tanzania, they're so protective about their data. But Kenya. So a couple of years ago, the government put out the regulation for data protection, which is mirrored on the European GDPR laws. So we're quite progressive in terms of that kind of regulation. And when it comes to data sovereignty, that's why big techs like Microsoft, AWS, Google, they're actually setting up their data centers here, but also their innovation hubs in this part of the world.
Slightly moving from that topic, then, what do you think is the biggest misconception that the world has about Kenya? Because evidently you've been able to grow businesses in Kenya, you've made it work, but there are many misconceptions out there that stop people wanting to trade with the nation.
Yeah, I mean, we host a lot of foreign visitors, suppliers, clients. We're actually located quite close to the airport, and when people land in Nairobi, the first thing they're amazed by is how green the place is, the city is. People expect that it's going to be desert, it's going to be quite underdeveloped. So Nairobi is becoming the new Johannesburg. So we have a developing skyline. We have the infrastructure there in terms of the road network, the rail network. But the biggest misconception is really the population and the capability of the population. So Kenyans are seen as our education system is very good here. The president before the last one made primary and secondary education, free of charge, but very high quality. So we're generating, good talent, and also culturally, Kenyans are quite smart, quite aggressive. That's why if you go to the UAE, you go to, some of the world-class hotels, airports, you'll see, Kenyans working out there. So I think we have, all the right factors or pieces of the puzzle within our country, in terms of our temperate climate, our fertile soil, our agriculture, smart talent, and then now infrastructure, connectivity, etc. So I think the country is quite well set to really have massive explosive economic growth in the coming couple of decades, as long as the politics is kept at bay.
I was going to say, we know that there is an elephant in the room, isn't there? Because there were riots in Kenya only a couple of years back, and those riots seem to have echoed itself right the way across the globe. Again, moving on the social aspect, you've been a change maker in Kenya because every business that you've been involved in, whether it is schooling or it is the competition within the currency part or it is the data centers, has touched the lives of the average Kenyan. Begs me to ask this question then. Kenya means something to you, evidently. Would that be right?
Absolutely, yeah. That's my roots.
Do you mean anything to Kenya?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm of Asian origin, and when people ask me, which nationality am I, and I identify myself as Kenyan because since I would say 5 years ago, our community has also been recognized as the 44th tribe, within the country. So I feel very well,
Do you feel
adapted.
validated by that for the fact that you've
Yeah,
got
I
that
feel
tribal
validated
status?
by that. I feel recognized. And what do I mean to Kenya is basically, with the experience that I've had with the businesses that I'm building, it's really what I want to give back to the country from the employment that we're creating, from the talent that I'm developing. So that's what I would like to give back to Kenya. And as a family, that's how we do it as well. My wife is in the medical profession. So that's also how we give back to society as well.
Do you feel that more can be done around the narrative of Kenya, i.e., showcasing what Kenyanness truly represents? And the reason why I say that precursor, you look at South Africa through its current incarnation, we're seeing the rises of far right populist narratives. We saw riots in the streets saying one bullet, one Indian. We're seeing a guise of that happening right now in Uganda, where they're saying, well, Uganda is for Ugandans, whatever that means, but this is a melanin based conversation. But what drives at this is the fact that communities have never really spoken about what impact that they've had. It's always been conversations around wealth rather than societal impact. Has that been the case in Kenya, or is that rapidly changing?
So Kenya, interestingly, is going through a massive transition. So, the politics of Kenya has actually been quite tribal, since independence. It's basically been the two big tribes kind of, competing against each other. And when you also look at the elections, it's been quite tribal. But I would say again, recently that's changing. And the riots that you mentioned actually last year was the Gen Zs, who were protesting against the cost of living, the corruption, those kind of social matters, and it didn't matter, which tribe you're from. So everybody came together. And now they're really fighting to make sure that there is a responsible government. Corruption is minimized, and there's positive social change. So I think those kind of transitions are actually happening for the better. And again, Kenya. So of course, we've got the Asian community here who has been here for many generations. But the United Nations, for example, its largest office outside New York is actually in Nairobi. We have a huge, vibrant, startup ecosystem. So we're a very cosmopolitan place. And then also with the number of Kenyans now working, outside the globe,
Absolutely.
the people that my school is training, who are as well qualified as a software engineer coming out of the Silicon Valley. They are actually doing remote work, earning in US dollars. So really, the globe is becoming such a small place, and I strongly believe that Kenya will be
That
positioned
was
quite well
so
in that.
tactfully done. That was so tactfully done. But coming back to the question at hand, then, what does it mean to be Kenyan to you? What is this idea of Kenyanness? Because there is something in the air in Kenya that is bringing people together. And as he rightly said last year, it was a non-tribal event. People came together saying, in our name as Kenyans, we want better. What does it mean to be Kenyan? What is that identity?
The identity is to, I would say, stand for quality and value for money. So, when you look at the products that are coming out of this part of the world, whether it's our flowers that are exported,
Yeah,
a lot to Europe, the talent coming out of here, in terms of say, software engineers, the elite runners who come from my city, they're really putting Kenya on the global roadmap and standing out, because they're providing something that is differentiated. and of value. So that's how I would say. So even, for example, the talent that's coming out of
But
here, it's very competitive because the salaries are much more
yeah,
affordable in
absolutely.
this part of the
But
world.
that's an economic part. What is the cultural part? What does Kenyanness mean? Because you're part of the tribes now. The South Asian community being recognized, but what does it mean to be Kenyan? What is that national identity? Apart from the commercial cost of living here is cheaper, labor costs are cheaper, therefore what we produce is of quality and of good export value. What does it mean to be Kenyan? I
So
know
now
that
you
these are big existential questions. I know. I do realize what
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
asking.
difficult question to answer. What does it mean to be Kenyan? I think it's known for quality. I mean, even if you go to the UK now, there's this cuisine that is coming out, which is called
Delicious.
Kenyan Indian food
Beautiful,
that you
isn't
find. So it's a blend of, it's very authentic. So
it?
yeah, I would say, yeah, I think that's the word I was looking for. Being Kenyan is being authentic.
You're gonna be pissing off a lot of people listening out there if they're in their countries. All right, coming back on the commercial part then. Obviously you made this all work, but your family has a long history in Kenya. That's correct, isn't there?
Yes,
And they would
yes.
have seen everything from the likes of the Mau Mau uprising. You mentioned obviously when you had that incarnation of the Idi Amin situation in Uganda. Was there ever a time in your family's history where they thought that's it, enough is enough, we're out of here, we can't stay for safety reasons or because of an idea of identity politics in the nation? And you know what I mean by that when it's Idi Amin's era. Was there ever a time in you guys' history that you thought that's it, we're out, we're not going to stay?
I mean, fortunately, we didn't have the extreme cases like, what say Uganda. So, I mean, Kenya, there was some danger, say in the early 70s that whatever was happening in Uganda could spill over. That's when my parents had considered the thought of, potentially, relocating because they had British passports, even though they were living in Kenya. But yeah, I think that's truly what my family has taught. And we're a family of businesses. My grandfather came here as a laborer to build a railway. But then we Indians have business in our blood, so they quickly got into trading and they built up from scratch.
Yeah.
My father had to leave school at the age of 12 because that's when my grandfather had a very bad accident. So, to look after an extended family. So, he's been a true, an entrepreneur. And despite all the challenges, they've always seen, opportunities, and lived through all the different eras of Kenya.
Is that because they had no choice? Was it the case of we have to see the opportunities because it's survival?
So the only time that my parents moved to the UK was in the early 90s, but there was nothing to do with business or politics because the businesses were flourishing in Kenya, but unfortunately they had to sacrifice for their children because the education system then only took to a certain level. So they sold everything, uprooted, and moved to the UK.
What was it like for you then? Because I know when we spoke prior to this, you said you were in the UK for over 15 years. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
That must have been a difficult decision to head back to Kenya. Did you actually think, do you know what? I'm going to go back home and set up business?
I think luck plays a great part. Once we had moved to the UK, yeah, I started my career there. I never thought about coming back, but being at the right place at the right time. When Orange bought the incumbent operation here, I was working for then the global CEO of Orange, and he knew that I had Kenyan roots, so said, "Do you fancy going back?" And actually, when I moved back, Rajan, this was in 2008. This was when there was massive political turbulence. It was during the election season. So I lived through that. So, as soon as I came here, the riots were happening like right outside our office. Our property was being all burnt down. But yeah, I mean, we came out of it. So as I said, Kenya, we go through the ups and downs, but in the end, everything works out.
It is so remarkable because you're so nonchalant about it. Yeah, there were riots, there was people outside, but we figure it out. We make it work. Is it nature or is it nurture for you? Because that's what I'm getting at. This Kenyan story of, in particular, with the South Asian community. Is it the case of, is within the South Asians that we have to go out there, we have to make it work? Or is it the case of we've got no choice because you're not going to get a government job or you're not going to get a job in some of the corporate sectors, so you have to use your own hands? I'm almost asking you to psychoanalyze yourself, which I think is, I know, entirely unfair, but do you think your story is a story of nature or is it a story of nurture? Was it the parents' conditioning that allowed you to flourish?
So I think for me, my journey has been a bit unique compared to my peers coming from here, because a lot of my peers, their parents have owned businesses here for decades, and typically what happens is they do the initial schooling here, and then they do the university education outside. They get some work experience, and then come back,
Yeah.
take over their businesses. I mean, I've always been a hired gun, until recently. So my career has been more sort of professional. But what's driven me over the last, I would say, 10 years with my startups is about the impact that I'm making, how I'm changing lives. So I just see massive opportunity. And I have the best of both worlds, because even though I'm working here, I'm working with investors who are actually coming from outside. So like our private equity investor is based out of the UK. So yeah, for me, I would say it's bit of both. Of
Yeah.
course, the upbringing has been very useful, very key. That's what made me resilient. But on the other hand, it's the environment that I'm in. Uh, you know, the weather certainly helps. We have sunshine 365 days
As
of the year.
and your brutal winter period, which is 20 degrees Celsius. I know, I feel for you.
Right.
You've got the ears of people across 48 countries at this moment in time on the podcast. We've got many heads of states. We've got a lot of people in the PE industry as also private equity players and a lot of ministers out there. What is the message that you want to leave to them about Kenya? Why should they consider Kenya as a business hub? And secondly, why should they trust what they hear when they listen when it comes to Kenya? Because there's a lot of countries out there trying to court individuals on a constant basis. Everybody wants that flow of money and access to financing. In your words, why should they care?
Yeah, yeah. So I think I'm someone who believes more in collaboration rather than competition. I'm sure the other countries are thinking, how could they compete against a place like Kenya? But I think there's a lot that first of all can be borrowed from each other. Like I was mentioning earlier, Kenya has been very progressive in terms of our regulation. So, for example, we were the first to put out the data protection regulation in this country, which is mirrored on GDPR. So now we're seeing many other countries and ministries, adopting that. When we're building our infrastructure here, it's first of all very costly
Yeah.
to do that. You need to have the know-how, etc. So you don't. Every country does not need to imitate that, but instead they can use the infrastructure that is here. And again, things like the data protection regulation allows for responsible data sharing as well. So those are some of the examples how we can really work with other countries as well. And then we've got talent to offer. So if you go to South Africa, for example, a lot of the leadership positions are actually from Kenya. You find that in the region as well, because I think number one, it's the culture of the Kenyan people who are very progressive. They're commercially savvy. There's a good education system here. So that's not to say that Kenyans will go and steal jobs from the other countries, but there could be a way where the talent here can be used to coach and develop the local talent in the other markets as well.
So
So
it's,
I think
it's
there's a lot of positive things that we can offer.
It's like almost like a talent hub, isn't it? And I think that's what we need, especially in a world of chat GPT and AI. that human contact part is going to be more important than ever. Final thoughts. Why are podcasts like this important? Because obviously we're tackling the elephant in the room, which is what on earth does it mean to be Kenyan? What is Kenyan identity? And having a look at it through the visors of business, but also social entrepreneurship. Why is this important for you? Why did you want to be part of the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm honored to be invited to this. You're looking at the global Indian network, but you're unlike other podcasts that I do, which are much more technical or more on the commercial angle. It's lovely to see that you're also tackling the issue of the social dynamics, like you said, in the AI world, with robots and all, humanity, or we are all at risk of losing our identities, right? So how do we preserve that culture? So I think that's important to also, and I'm somebody who is into lifelong learning. So I like to challenge myself, develop my skills, and the way you do it is, I mean, you can do it by reading, but also by the interaction. So I also got to learn about your journey as well, and how you've traveled, and you're trying to put this Asian or Indian identity out there with case studies and examples. So yeah, so it's really been great
Ah, you
learning and
charmer.
chatting with you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If people want to find out more about the data centers, if people want to find out more about how the investments work there, where do they go? Who do they approach?
They can look at our website. There's a lot of information there about our journey, our sort of technical competencies, our investors. So our company is called iXAfrica Data Centers. But there's a lot of material out there as well. In fact, just yesterday, I got again honored to be an ambassador for this movement called the Nomad Futurist. And our ambition is to basically build up a big talent pool of technical talent working in the digital infrastructure space out of Africa, but then not only train them, but also find work opportunities for them, not only on the continent, but also
The
then
whole ecosystem.
help them
Absolutely.
to find opportunities outside as well. So look at Nomad Futurist as well, because there's a lot of technical learning material on there as well.
Sounds good. It has been an absolute pleasure to have your voice recorded.
Thanks so much, Rajan.